You recently tweeted, quote, something no one is talking about after the merge. There's a strong case, there will be a strong case that Ether will be a security. The token in any proof of stake system is likely to be a security. Can you explain what you mean and why do you scare the world with that?
Okay, so first let's start from the big picture here. There's a general question with any kind of crypto about whether it's a security, and a lot of crypto enthusiasts have argued that the traditional tests for what constitutes a security are simply inapplicable to crypto, that crypto is somehow different. To my ears as a law professor, that sounds a little like the Spinal Tap, these go to 11 argument, right? Because the test for what is a security has been around since 1946. It's called the Howey test. It comes from a Supreme Court case, and it's an economic realities test. It doesn't care about the particulars of technology. Instead, it's looking at the sort of four elements. Is there an investment of money? Is it an investment in a common enterprise? Is there an expectation of profits? And are those profits to be produced primarily from the efforts of others? And when you apply that to any kind of token that has a proof of staking function, it starts to look like it meets the test. And the reason is that if you have to put up a stake, that's your investment of money right there. And a proof of stake system doesn't have a standalone validator. Validators have to work in packs, right? So for Ether, you're going to have a pack of 128 validators working together. And those are randomly assigned people, so there's basically zero chance it's going to be 120, that one person serves as all 128 at the same time. And you're expecting to get rewards from that. And those rewards are coming primarily from the efforts of the other 127 in the pack, not from you. And I think if you take a literal application of the Howey test, it starts to look like the staking makes it a security, and then anytime those securities get sold to anyone else, and you don't know exactly where the Ether you're buying is coming from, you're buying a security. Now, whether the SEC does anything with this is a totally different question. And it's part of the bigger question about what the SEC is going to do with crypto in general. But there's, I think, a reasonable kind of first glance case that after the merge, you're looking at a system where you have a security.
Yeah, this is a really interesting thesis. I mean, what's interesting is I believe that Gary Gensler has suggested in the past that ETH was a security for different reasons, right? I think he's kind of insinuated that, or maybe said it directly. So, okay, if this happens, right, and obviously this is a big if, and I'm sure there are a lot of ETH enthusiasts out there who would, vehemently deny that this will happen. But if this happens, what does it look like? I mean, if ETH is designated a security, like that's a big deal, right? So what does that mean? I mean, how would that play out in practice?
Okay, so that would be a huge deal, except the designated as a security is the issue. The SEC doesn't go around and designate things as securities. Rather, the way it works is something is either a security or it isn't. And if it is one and you are doing a sale without either registering it or qualifying for a registration exemption, then that is your legal violation right there. Whether it gets enforced is a separate question, right? The SEC has quite finite enforcement resources. As much as the crypto world thinks that it's this big bad bugbear, it actually doesn't do that much. Its enforcement resources are quite limited. But this leaves a lingering question. And where I think this really matters is with exchanges. So, in the DeFi world, no one's going to care because in the DeFi world, there's the thought that enforcement is basically impossible. You'll never catch us, and so what do we have to worry about? But for centralized exchanges, there's a real issue. Right? They have compliance personnel, and those compliance personnel, their job is to worry. Right? They are the people who are supposed to bring umbrellas to the picture, and they're going to have to ask the question about, well, is this a security now? And they have a tremendous competitive pressure that's pushing them to find the answer to be no, or just to be ignored. Because once one exchange is listing something, then every other exchange feels it needs to keep up. Because exchanges work as they have network effects. They need to have a large body of customers. And the way you attract a large body of customers at the margin is by offering more products. So there's this competitive pressure to start listing every possible thing, even if it's pretty clearly a security. And there are certainly things that I think are even more clearly securities than Ethereum will be after the merge. But that's where the rub will be. And if the SEC wants to try and force exchanges to come into the regulatory system and start registering as securities exchanges, this gives them, I think, the strongest lever they possibly have. Because if you take a random coin, like the ones that the SEC alleged were the center of insider trading violations at Coinbase, right? Was it AMP, for example? That's not a particularly widely traded coin. If Coinbase has to, it will delist it, right? And it's no big deal. It's not going to be essential to Coinbase's business model. Ethereum's a different story, right? And an exchange that doesn't list Ethereum isn't going to be in business. So this gives the SEC a really potent lever to try and push exchanges to start registering as securities exchanges. And if they do that, it fundamentally changes the exchange business model. Because the exchanges right now wear three different hats. They're brokers, they are exchanges, and they're clearinghouses. And if they have to register as exchanges with the SEC, they're probably going to have to divest those different lines of business because there are just too many conflicts of interest when you're wearing all three hats. And that will have enormous effects on the centralized exchange world. It may push a lot of stuff into DeFi, or it may just mean that, especially for ma-and-pa investors who like the easy kind of tech interface of centralized financial institutions, that you're going to just have very different business models going forward.
Yes, but Adam, you're talking about these business models in the context of what you think the SEC's power is over exchanges without the interference of Congress.
Absolutely, that's what I'm trying.
So the only thing I'm wanting to get your insight on out here is that yesterday we had CFTC Commissioner Pham on, and she, almost clearly said that the SEC's move was a gotcha move. And my question out here is that when they go ahead and have this insider trading case without the Congress coming out with the law, with the legislation that makes it very clear for exchanges like Coinbase about what to do, and they have been trying their best, at least it seems like that from their Twitter feed when Brian Armstrong is at Congress, to engage with the people out there, to try to get that regulation out. Then whatever is happening, the SEC trying to make sure that you have this label of securities on certain things. In the way that they're doing it, is that fair? Is that democratic? Is that constitutional?
Sure. Certainly what they're doing, I think, is there's no question on the constitutionality point. Is it fair and democratic, right? That's a broader issue just about how regulatory agencies work in the United States. The Constitution doesn't mention anything about regulatory agencies, but we've been living with them for over a century. It's not. I don't think they're about to disappear. Coinbase's argument has been this is regulation by enforcement, and you're basically instituting new regulations through enforcement actions rather than going through the congressionally approved notice and comment rulemaking process where you tell everyone, here's what we're planning on doing. We want your feedback. We're going to respond to it. And then we will have a final product. I don't think that's a fair characterization of what the SEC is doing. The SEC is applying a well-established definition of security. They're not changing what the definition of security is. It's a question of application. And you can have disagreements about an application, but it's not. The SEC is not stating a new blanket rule that applies to everyone. It's simply saying, here's the test that's a security. We've had that test since 1946, and we're applying it to the facts before us on this particular security today. There's not a blanket statement that everything with a proof of stake is security. Instead, it's going to be security system by system that this will get applied. And Coinbase doesn't like that, understandably. There's a real threat to its business model here. But right. And it makes perfect sense that they're looking to Congress for relief. I'm skeptical that we're going to legislation.
Okay. The only thing I want to ask you is, and if you're saying that the SEC's move is fair because it's well established, explain this to me. Did they do it fairly when they did not consult the CFTC before they did it.
Yeah, they have no duty to consult the CFTC when bringing in enforcement action. That is,
even if it's a common practice, even if this is a common practice in a space where the jurisdiction has not been clearly laid out in this situation.
Well, the SEC, I think, thinks that the jurisdiction is clearer. That's the whole point, right? If it's unclear, then absolutely, certainly the collegial move among regulators would be to consult. Consultation doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, right? You can give them hey, here's a heads up. Here's what we're thinking of doing, and you can hear what they have to say and disregard it. But if the SEC thinks this is clearly a security, then the question is, why would they consult with the CFTC? It's not the CFTC's lane if it's a security.